story time on how my wallet got stolen and I managed to figure out who stole it, track them down, get them to willingly give it back with all of the stuff in it, and why I bought them lunch afterward. Oh, and I got all of this done within 45 minutes without the help of the police, and it happened yesterday. So this is piping hot tea for y'all. But before we get into my story time, hey, what's up, y'all? This is Jacob. Welcome back to Sunday Yap Session, the show where every Sunday I hop on here and yap at you all about something with some sort of cohesive through line to carry us all through, and sometimes we do better than others. If you enjoyed today's video, please be sure to give it a like because that helps me out quite a bit. And if you want to come yap with me every single Sunday, be sure to hit that subscribe button because I upload at least once a week and sometimes more. All right, so here's what happened. So yesterday, I'm finishing up my work day, I'm getting all of my stuff wound down for the day, and I'm getting ready to go on my weekly walk that I go on with my boyfriend. So I'm getting ready, I'm putting on all my new stuff, and I put on these new pair of gym shorts that I recently got, and I'm going down, leaving my apartment, getting all my stuff, phone, wallet, keys, so on and so forth, and I leave out my apartment to go drive over to his apartment. Where I park my car is like 3 minutes or less of a walk away from my apartment. So I walk over to my car, I sit down, and then I reach down and I noticed that my wallet is missing from my pocket. Now, like I mentioned, I had just gotten some new shorts from the thrift store, and I noticed that like my chapstick would like constantly fall out, and I was noticing that it would fall like in that little crevice between like my car seat and the car door. So I'm just like, oh, okay, whatever. It probably just like fell out of my pocket. So I'm like reaching down and I get my chapstick and I'm like, okay, my chapstick fell out too. Reaching for my wallet. Where's my wallet? And I keep reaching and I'm not feeling my wallet. And I'm reaching and reaching and reaching, and I don't find my wallet. So I like get out of the car, I'm like looking under the seats or whatever, and I like don't see my wallet. And I'm like, okay, whatever. Like this wasn't that far of a walk. Maybe it just like fell out of my pocket on the way there. So I start like retracing my steps. I like walk all the way back to my apartment. I'm like looking around, looking on the ground. There's not really anybody like out and about all that much at this point, and I don't see my wallet like sitting anywhere. So I'm just like, okay, maybe I left it in my apartment. Like I'm kind of forgetful sometimes. Maybe I just literally forgot to grab it and it wasn't there. Cause like, where would it be? So I come back up to my apartment and I looking around on all of my normal stuff that I would place it. It's nowhere. So then I go back to my car and I'm like, okay, surely it's under my seat, because I'm like not wanting to like accept the fact that it's gone at this point. And I'm like looking under my car seat and I'm like doing that sort of looking where like, you know, something's gone, you know, something's been taken, or like it's not in the place that you're looking for, but you're like looking and looking and looking as if you like look harder, it'll just like manifest itself and appear in the car seat. So I'm like looking and it's not there, and I'm not finding it because it's not there. And so I start like retracing my steps. I go back to the way that I walked over there. I'm looking in like other areas that I know like wasn't where I parked my car, but like maybe I just like forgot. I go back up to my apartment and I'm like doing this cycle for like 10-15 minutes until I'm just like, okay, it must have fallen out and somebody must have picked it up and taken it. Now, amidst all of this searching, the first thing that I did was go in and lock all of my cards, because fortunately, I'm able to remotely turn off access to them so I can lock them so that nobody can make purchases. And with my credit cards, I can also turn on text notifications for if someone tries to charge my card and the card doesn't go through. That's an important detail that we will keep in mind for later. But at this point, I'm not even really thinking, well, like somebody stole it. I'm like, okay, maybe somebody picked it up and they like turned it in somewhere or whatever. So I like call my apartment security. They haven't seen it. I go and talk to some of like the local businesses because I'm close with like some of the business owners around here. None of them have seen it. And I'm just like, okay, somebody picked it up. I'm sure that they'll turn it in at some point. I'm just gonna go drive. I'll go on my walk and I'll just like figure it out from there. I'm sure I'll get a phone call at some point. Somebody will call me and give me my wallet. And at this point too, where my head's at, like I'm not even annoyed because I know that I'm not gonna lose any money because I locked my cards and I hadn't got any notifications, but I had my gym card in there and I was planning to go to the gym after my walk. My library card is in there, my driver's license, which would be like 60 something dollars to replace, was in there, and my CVS card. And I'm like, I just want those cards back. I'm not even really mad that my wallet has or hasn't been stolen. Like, I don't know at this point. I just want my license and my gym card back so like my routine isn't thrown off. So like that's kind of where I was at this point. So at this point, I'm basically just like, okay, I'll go on my walk. Hopefully whoever found my wallet will give me a call, and this will all just be like a little goofy inconvenience or whatever. So I get in my car and I drive over to my boyfriend's apartment, and I'm driving and like halfway through the drive, I get a text notification, and the notification says, hey girl, somebody just tried to spend $61 at a liquor store right down the street from your apartment. And I was like, oh, Okay. And so immediately I'm driving, I'm calling the liquor store because I figured out where they were. I'm driving my car and I'm like, hey girl, did somebody just come in here like 2 minutes ago and try to buy some alcohol for like this amount? And we had like a back and forth because they kind of like were misunderstanding. They thought the charge went through, but I was like, no, the charge would have got like denied, but like here's the amount. And he's like, oh, yes, okay, yes, I know exactly who you're talking about. Let me talk to my coworker, blah, 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 blah. So I'm like driving. He comes back and he's like, okay, like I can't pull the security footage without like getting in contact with the police or whatever. So like you'd have to call them, bring him down here and I can like give you the footage. But like I have a description and I'm like, okay, cool. So he's like, yeah, this guy's about 6 feet. I'm like, face, neck, and body tattoos. I'm like, oh. And he's like, yeah, and he had like a small backpack and he was like Latino or Hispanic. And I'm like, okay, cool. I've got a description now. So I pull up to my boyfriend's apartment. I go up there and he's like, hey, did you find your wallet? I'm like, no, girl. Also, like, I guess I have to call the police to like figure out what's gonna happen here. Now, I didn't want to get the police involved at all, and we're gonna talk about that here in just a minute, but I'm like, okay, if I have to like use them to get in contact with like the business to get the security footage, sure, whatever, cool. So I call the police and I'm like, hey, here's what happened. Like, I just want to talk to somebody about this and like how to go about this. What do I need to do? The person on the phone, he could not give 2 F's about my situation. He was like,
yeah, just go online, you need to fill out this form, and then like you have to go to the business and then call us and then we'll show up and we'll request the security about.
I'm like, okay. Clearly you do not care and you're just trying to push me off to do this form or whatever, which like I get it. I'm not expecting customer service out of them, but I'm like, at least be like, hey, that sucks. I'm sorry to hear that happened to you, blah, 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 blah. He did not care. He was like, fill out this form and we'll figure it out. And I'm like, okay. So then I look at my boyfriend and I'm thinking, and the cogs are turning and I'm like, I don't want to work with the police anyway. I know where this guy was last. How about we just figure it out? Let's put on our little Nancy Drew Sherlock Holmes hats. Let's go find this guy and go get my wallet back. And he's like, bet. So we go get in my car and we drive over to the liquor store. And we're like talking about like what's gonna happen with this situation. I'm like hoping that this person will just like give me my wallet back. And I was talking to my boyfriend. I'm like, if he wants food, if he wants alcohol, whatever, I will buy it. I literally just want my license, my library card, my gym card, and my CVS card back. Like that's literally all I want. If we have to do like a bartering situation, I'm cool with that. And I'm gonna be real too. Like if we need to scrap, I will do that too. Granted, do I think that I can beat up somebody who is 6 feet tall with face tattoos? No. Me and my boyfriend together, maybe, and he was down to help me out with whatever way I needed. And shout out to my boyfriend because he was so helpful throughout this entire story. He's an MVP for real. So I pull up to the liquor store. I don't see anybody that matches this description. I'm looking around. We also were driving around just checking to see like if they maybe dumped my wallet, because I assumed like after the first charge, because all of my cards got denied, he tried to use like both of my credit cards. So I assumed like maybe he would just like dump my wallet. So we're like driving around looking through the parking lot, looking kind of anywhere that like my wallet would be, because my wallet is like bright yellow, so it was gonna be very easy to spot. I didn't see it anywhere. So I'm just like, okay, we'll drive around for a while, try to find this guy, and like if we have to go to the police, sure, we'll do that, but like I don't want to do that. So we're driving around, and we're basically like having to profile people on the street, which this entire situation felt like very racist. Because like I'm basically driving around for somebody who looks like phenotypically Hispanic or Latino, that is tall with tattoos and has a backpack. I also assumed too like this is somebody who was like presumably unhoused or something, because there's a large unhoused population around my area. So I'm like looking around, basically looking at unhoused people, and me and my boyfriend are like, do they look Hispanic? Do they have a backpack? Do they have face tattoos? I like stop and talk to a couple people, like nobody has seen anything. We're not really seeing anybody that matches the description. So I'm like, okay, we're sitting here like trying to like think like, okay, where would somebody have gone next? Like, where would you go next? And I'm like, okay, there's another liquor store like down this street that's within like walking distance. Cause I also was assuming this person was on foot too. So I'm like, okay, where was a reasonable distance to walk? And like how far would you have been able to get in this amount of time? So I'm like, okay, let's go to this side of town because I know there's a liquor store like down the street. So I'm like driving around. We're going to like all of these hubs too, where like I know that like a lot of house populations hang out at, and I'm not seeing anybody. And then we like turn a corner and I see a group of like 4 like Hispanic looking dudes. All of them have backpacks, but they look big. They have a big dog with them as well. And I'm like, if it was like a 2v1, if it was even a 1v1, like sure, like 4 people versus 2, I'm like, no, like I'm not trying to get like beat up over there. And two, like, again, like, I feel so bad because I'm like, I don't want to just be like, hey, you look like this person that I'm looking for. Like, did you rob me or did you steal from me? Like, it felt very, very gross. So I was like, I'm not going to approach that group of people. I'm going to assume it's not them. So we don't really see anything in this area of town. So I'm like, okay, let's go over to this other side of town because I know that there's like another large, like, unhoused population that hangs out over here. So I drive over to that other side of town. This was about like 5 or 6 minutes away. Don't see anybody that matches the description. And I'm like, okay, where would this person have gone? They couldn't have got very far. And then I looked down at my phone and I saw that I got another notification from 3 minutes ago and it said another charge attempt for like $14 at this local Mexican bodega that was right by where we were the first place that we went to. So I whipped my car back around and I'm like, I knew that this was the direction that like would have gone. I wish I would have like had my phone out. And this time I didn't even call the business I had because we were so close. So I pull up my car, my boyfriend like waits outside kind of by my car, like keeping an eye out, seeing if he sees this person. And I go inside and I'm like, hey, did somebody that's like 6 feet tall, Hispanic or Latino with tattoos and a backpack just come in here and try to buy something and get their card denied? And it was like a woman that was working the business and then I believe like her son. And he's like, oh, was it like a guy, like a beefy guy with face tattoos? And I was like, yeah. And she's like, is your name Jacob? And I was like, yeah. And she's like, yeah, baby, he was like just here. And he's like, 1 second, hold up a minute. I'm gonna call the guy who owns like the place next door. He controls the security footage and we'll get you the security footage. And I was like, thank you. So I'm sitting there waiting and I'm like talking to her and she's like, yeah, like this is somebody I've seen around this area like pretty frequently. Like I've seen him around all the time. And he comes in here a decent bit and he's like using cards or like at least one card that like doesn't have his name on it. And like it goes through and like, so I never really questioned it or anything. Like I assumed he was borrowing it from somebody or whatever, but like he always kind of acts a little bit shifty, so on and so forth. So my boyfriend's outside waiting. I'm in here waiting for them to get the security footage. And then my boyfriend texts me and he's like, hey, I see somebody out here who looks pretty close to the description we're looking for, but he is with like 2 other guys. And I'm like, great, okay. So he pulls up the security footage after waiting for like 5 minutes or so, and he shows me the guy. Now, like I said, this guy looks beefy. This guy looks pretty intimidating. This is not somebody who I want to scrap with. So I like take pictures of the security footage. I'm like so thankful. I'm like, thank you all so much. And she's like, yeah, like you should probably call the police and like have them figure this out. And I'm like, yeah, like if I have to do that, I will, but like I really don't want to get the police involved because like I understand where this person's coming from. I know how rough the economy is. I know how tough it is to be unhoused. I know just like the general state of the world is super, super sucky right now. If I was in his shoes and I just randomly found a wallet and found a bunch of like cards in it, if I was also like desperate and struggling, I would have maybe done the same thing too. So like, I'm not even mad at the situation. I'm just annoyed at the inconvenience it's gonna take to replace all of these like documents and IDs and things that I have in there. So like, if I can just get my stuff back, no harm, no foul. So I go outside because I'm like, okay, I have the description now. Let's go find this guy. And my boyfriend's like, he's right over there. So then I look and I see the same exact person from the security footage, and he's like walking not towards us, but there's like a sidewalk in front of this business, and he's walking like our direction up the sidewalk. So I'm just like, okay, let's see how this goes. And he's like by himself at this point. So me and my boyfriend walk over there and I'm like, hey, I think you have my wallet. And then he's like doing all these gestures, like gesturing that he's like deaf. And I'm like, girl, okay. So I'm like, I think you have my wallet. And so he's still walking like as I'm approaching him. And we kind of get like parallel and I can see inside of his hoodie pocket and I see my wallet. So I'm like, you have my wallet. I would like my wallet back. And then he starts being like, oh, like I don't speak, like in Spanish, like I don't speak English, like I don't understand you, so on and so forth. And I'm like, girl, I see my wallet. And I don't know very much Spanish. I struggled through my 2 college Spanish classes, but I remember the word for yellow. So I'm like, amarillo. I see it, baby. I see it. So then he's like, oh, this is yours? And like pulls out my wallet and I'm like, yeah, that's my wallet. And he's like, oh, sorry, man. I didn't know. And I'm like, listen, dude, like, if you like need food or something, like if you want me to buy you some stuff, like I don't really care. I just want like my IDs and my stuff back. I'll literally go into this bodega and buy you food right now. I don't want to get the police involved. I don't want to press charges. I don't want to get you in trouble. I literally just want my wallet back. And so he's like, oh yeah, bro. And so he just gives me my wallet. And I'm like, okay, what do you want? And I'm like, do you want like alcohol? Because I thought you were trying to buy that, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, oh, I just want like water or something like that. And I'm like, okay, wait here. I'll be back in like 5-10 minutes and I'll go get you some food or whatever. So I go back inside and I'm like, I got it. And the lady's like, oh, you got it? And my boyfriend comes in too. And I'm like, yeah, he was like right there. And she's like, he just gave it back? And I was like, yeah. And I'm like gonna buy him some like lunch or whatever. And so I like grab some water bottles and I'm like, what do you got like food wise? And both my boyfriend and her are like, girl, what? Like, oh, you're actually gonna do that? And I'm like, yeah, of course. And so my boyfriend and her are both like, you're being like way nicer than either of us would about this. And I'm just like, listen, I get it. Things are very, very rough right now. Like, I understand where he's coming from. It's not that serious. So I get like a little 3 taco special. I buy a couple water bottles. Now my boyfriend had gone back outside while I was waiting for the food. And what he was telling me from his perspective, the guy that stole my wallet, he like stood there for a little bit and then like walked off and like walked like a good bit away and like stood and hung out by a sign for a little bit and was like just staring at the sign or whatever. And then he came back and was telling my boyfriend like, oh, like there's like a green food card in there that I need. So my boyfriend comes in and tells me that. I'm like looking through the wallet or whatever and I see like a bus ticket, a card that had like a Hispanic sounding name. And I assume that was like the food card he was talking about. And then some other person's Chime card. And so I go back up to the lady working and I was like, is this that other card that you told me that he's been using? Does this name look familiar? And she's like, yep. That's the one. So I'm like, okay, I'm keeping that and I'm gonna try to find that girl later, but I'll give him his other 2 cards back. She makes the food, I get the drinks, and I go out there and he's like out there waiting for me sitting on the bench. So I'm just like, hey, like I told you I'd buy you some food. I walk up and give him the stuff and he's like, listen, man, like I owe you an apology. And I'm like, I get the situation you're in. And he's like, no, but like I owe you an apology, dude. Like seriously, like I've never done anything like this before. And in the back of my mind, I'm like, girl, well then whose Chime card is this? But I'm like, okay, whatever. And so he's like, yeah, like I've never done anything like this before. And like, I'm in a really rough situation right now where I'm like staying with these people that are like doing a lot of drugs all the time and stuff like that. And like, I don't want to do drugs anymore. So like, I don't want to be involved with them, but they like are being like super hostile with me if I don't like do drugs with them. And so like, I'm trying to get out of here. And so the first thing I tried to do when I like got your wallet was like go buy a bus ticket so I can get out of here. I didn't really look too close at like the bus pass. So I don't know if like the bus pass that he bought, he was able to like buy that, because I did notice like afterwards, after the situation was over, that like all of the change in my wallet was gone. So maybe he like took all of my change and bought a bus pass or something like that. I don't know if that was true or whatever, but he like seemed like pretty genuinely apologetic. He was like not hostile with me or anything like that. So I give him the tacos. Was his story true? Who knows? But I looked back as I was getting in my car to like pull off and he like chugged one of those bottles of water. So like it seemed like he was pretty hungry and pretty thirsty. So like I'm just going to assume that all of the stuff that he said had some degree of truth of it, and he was like going through a rough situation. Because the lady that was working too was like, oh yeah, I've seen him around here a handful of times. He kind of hangs out in this area and he goes like in and out of this one house that's like down the street that has like a bunch of people, I guess, in it. And like I looked at the house looked all like boarded out and like not looking great. It was giving like trap house vibes. Like the situation did not look cute or whatever. So I'm like, I got my stuff back. I gave him the bus packs. I gave him that other card back. And then I went on my walk and I went to the gym and I had a beautiful rest of my day. And honestly, like the entire situation, granted, while the beginning of the inciting incident was definitely like stressful and a little annoying, it was fun. I had fun driving around town with my boyfriend, like being like Nancy Drew, looking around, trying to look for clues, looking for evidence, like tracking this all down, so on and so forth. So like, I honestly wasn't even mad and I had a fun story to tell y'all. I had a fun little adventure and it was definitely like the most interesting thing that's happened to me in the last like couple months. So I was like not even pressed about it. Now let's get into why I didn't want to work with the police. First and foremost, it should be pretty obvious why I don't want anything to do with the police at all. And based on the way that that little phone conversation went when I was talking to them about like how that would all work, it did not seem like they were too interested. And especially knowing just like how long it takes the police to respond to things, I feel like this would have taken like 5 times the amount of time if I had worked with the police. But also, as part of my political praxis and my morals and my values, I don't always think that we need to be exploring carceral solutions to these problems. Like if I had got the police involved and this person like ended up getting arrested arrested, put in jail, or like having charges against them for doing that. He wouldn't have felt good, and I wouldn't have felt good about it either. Now, especially with the stuff that's going on like politically, like all of those like Venezuelan gang members that the president just had deported and sent to international prison, the political landscape and the relationship between like the police, our state, and a lot of the like discriminatory things that are going on under the guise of like protecting the country, rounding up international enemies, blah, blah, blah. Like, who knows what would have happened to this guy? I especially know for like Black and brown people that interacting with the police and interacting with our criminal justice system is not a fair and equitable system that treats us well. It was not that many years ago that our police in the city that I live in shot and killed an unarmed Black man, and these things happen all around the country at rates that are spooky to me. And that's why I want to share this story with y'all. Do I expect all of you, if something like this happens to you, to like go on a little investigation and go solve it yourself? Maybe not. I don't know if you have the means to. Like, it worked out for me. All I'm saying is, though, I think there are opportunities for us to explore non-carceral solutions to some of our problems. And wouldn't you know, using my deductive skills, using my community, using the resources around me, and just engaging and talking with people and engaging them like human beings, including the person who stole my wallet, ended up with the situation being resolved non-violently and with everybody walking away benefiting from the situation. That's why I wanted to share that with you all today, to just like get you to think a little bit differently about some of these things, and also just to share this like wacky little story that happened. I've never done story times on here. There's so many like wacky stories from my life that I've like wanted to share. So if you enjoyed me telling this and you want to hear more stories, maybe I'll incorporate them more into these series. But yeah, hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, like I said at the beginning, be sure to give this video a like because that helps me out quite a bit. And if you want to come gap with me every single Sunday, be sure to hit that subscribe button because I upload at least once a week, sometimes more. I will catch you all in the next episode. See you later.